I'm going to let Doug tell us while I make sure that Tyler has the right Zoom link. Our briefer this morning. Doug's going to tell us what happens on Saturday at the walk if it's raining.
Well, first of all, it's clear skies. We've been given that assurance. It is going to be, I think the low is going to be 63. The high that day will be 78. It is always a gorgeous Saturday, and there's no better way to start your day than to come out and be with many people from across San Antonio who are there to support better mental health in our community. And I can't think of a better way to do that than get out and walk on a beautiful day with tons and tons of friends and people who have a great heart and compassion for other people.
So you've got a direct line to the Rainmaker.
We do. We do.
Well, then why didn't you have a direct line and send that rain, like throughout the last couple months? Because I'm really grateful this morning.
If you don't get rain for a while, you really appreciate it. So
that's right.
That's what this is about.
Okay. So we're on for Saturday morning. We're not going to worry about that. So tomorrow, and I'll put the link in again, we're going to have the Multi-Faith Symposium with public safety in the Fusion Center with a conversation on violence between public safety and faith leaders and ourselves. Everybody will get a chance to be a part of that conversation. There is a prayer service before Faith in Blue at 8 a.m. And then the symposium begins at 9 and goes to right before noontime. So I'll put that link in the chat and I hope you all can come. I think it's a little bit of history in the making for us to have this important conversation. It will be opened by the mayor and the chief of police. So I invite you to be there if you haven't already signed up. Other announcements. Hi, Tyler, I see you're here. We give people up until about 8:05 for announcements, and then we'll hand it over to you. Any other upcoming thoughts? Well, we're a quiet batch this morning. I know the Domestic Violence Symposium is tomorrow. No, it's today and tomorrow. So there's still opportunities to be a part of that. And I'll see if I can find the link real quick and put that into chat as well. I want to invite you all to start marking your calendars, saving some dates for some upcoming important events. So you might old school here with a pen. Sunday, November 19th, noon to 5 at the Alamo Dome. There is going to be a voluntary weapons exchange. Councilman John Courage is putting that together. And again, it's voluntary. People who bring in guns that they just, don't know what to do with them and want to get rid of them, they will receive HEB gift cards in return for turning that in. And depending on the weapon, the cards are like $50 to $400. So that's November 19th. It's a Sunday, noon to 5 at the Alamo Dome. On Tuesday, November 21st, where it's an event that's been happening, but it's becoming much more this year. There's usually an annual Thanksgiving service at the Cathedral, San Fernando Cathedral. But this year, it's going to start at 4. You can come whenever you want between 4 and 7. But there'll be a building of a construction on the main plaza, a citywide food drive. So the food bank's going to be there. At 6 o'clock, there's going to be music on the plaza interspersed with table prayers from different faith traditions and religions. And then at 7, we'll all process into the cathedral for a prayer service and even more amazing music. So mark that date on your calendar. And one last save the date is the inaugural Festival of Faiths Sunday, January 21st. I hope all these dates are right. And so just mark that. It's in the afternoon and it'll be held at Incarnate Word. So those are 3 upcoming good dates. So it's 8:06, and I want to thank Tyler Rogers, who's here all the way from DC, like Sharon is here all the way from New Orleans. And Tyler works within the Surgeon General's office. And we've been kind of working together over this last year in terms of Compassionate USA, that people's campaign that we've put together here in San Antonio, but how it links so well with the US Surgeon General's advisory on the epidemic of loneliness and the importance of social connection. That advisory came out in May. And so I asked Tyler to come today and kind of give us an update of what's been happening with that advisory, what others have been doing across the country, what we could be doing. So Tyler, if you want, I can open the screen. You don't have to do that. But thank you for coming all this way this morning. And you might tell us too, Tyler, what role do you serve in the Surgeon General's office?
Absolutely. Thanks, Anne. And I'm also here with my colleague, Raphael, as well. Raphael is the deputy director of our engagement team. I'm the associate director on our engagement team. He is here all the way from DC. I'm here all the way from virtual office in Brooklyn. We have a pretty remote team and spread across the country. I just so happen to be in New York. But my role on the team is around our social connection and loneliness work, trying to kind of build on the advisory that we released back in May. And Rafa oversees sort of all of our different work on mental health and well-being more broadly. And he'll kick off the presentation. I'll add in a little bit of where we're at today and what we're doing moving forward for the fall. And then we'll be happy to take some Q&A.
Great. Can't wait.
Great. Thank you so much, Tyler. So one, appreciate you all inviting us to chat with you today about such an important topic related to our office, but obviously from what we've learned from you and important to the work that you all have been doing in the greater San Antonio area. I'll probably kick us off with some background about what the advisory was, what some of our work has looked like, what are some of the recommendations that the advisory calls for, and then I'll bring Tyler in to share more around the engagements that our office is doing. Now that the advisory is out there in the world, what does that mean? What are the next steps for our office? But I really want to make sure that we leave time open for just Q&A, and would love for this to be a conversation so that we could be as helpful as we can to the work that you all are doing. So to kick us off, back in the spring, we released an advisory on loneliness and social connection. And as you all may know, this really was the culmination of several years of work in the behavioral health, mental health space for the Surgeon General. Back when he was Surgeon General under the Obama administration, the focus of his time was really spent on the opioid crisis and addiction. And the loneliness work that we are involved in now really started as a result of conversations that he was having with individuals, families, clinicians, educators, faith-based organizations. What started as addiction ultimately always led to conversations about a feeling of loneliness, folks not being connected with their family members and loved ones. And I would say that planted the seed for what ultimately became a topic that we really began working with researchers and subject matter experts to learn more about. And what we found was how pervasive loneliness was across the country, which is, one thing and a reason why the nation's doctors should probably be speaking about it. But ultimately, what we really found out was that there's something we could do about it. And that a lot of folks were interested here. They didn't necessarily know what their role was in this space. There's a bit of a clunky topic for doctors to talk about and to really bring folks in, but there was such a consensus around the fact that it was in our communities and we were all experiencing this. But there was such a need for a better understanding around what we can be doing, how we could best address this, and how we could set our country on a path forward, so that we do feel more socially connected, given all the tools that we have at our disposal. So when we put out the loneliness advisory, what we really wanted to do was create that roadmap. We want to make the case and explain the science with an evidence base around why this is important, and lay out the foundation for why, or at least for how loneliness affects us both physically and mentally. But the real crux of the advisory is to lay out recommendations for what various sectors can do about this problem, spanning all the way from, local, state, and federal governments, to educators, to the healthcare sector, to community-based organizations, including faith-based organizations, and individuals and parents alike. And one of the more interesting statistics, I would say, that we found out when we embarked on the creation of this advisory was the fact that, and I believe this was a Gallup survey at the earlier end of the pandemic. So I don't know if I'd be interested to know what changed since the pandemic, but only 47% of Americans said they belong to a church, synagogue, or mosque, which has declined substantially since the 70s. And we know the important role that faith-based organizations play into bringing people together, really being a connector and a hub and a nucleus for so many communities. And seeing that statistic, that's been a big part of why we've wanted to better engage with these groups, both at the community level, but also at the campus level. We know that young people are some of the most disconnected in our communities, and Dr. Murthy, myself, and others on our team have began coordinating more regularly with campus chaplains to understand the role and the work that they are doing to better engage young people, to ensure that they are as social connected as they can be, so that they are gaining the tools and the foundation that they need to take with them throughout their life. Some of the recommendations that the advisory calls for are, I would say, six important ones, I think, relate to community-based organizations and faith-based organizations specifically, that I'll share. And then, Tyler, I'll throw it to you to do an overview of some of the engagements that we have planned on going before we go into the Q&A. One is creating opportunities and spaces for inclusive social connection. And what we mean by that is really the role of what so many community-based organizations are. They're dot connectors. They bring people together around topics that are culturally competent and sensitive to what their communities are most interested in. So it's really just leaning in on that role as a connector to bring folks together. Embed social connection in internal policies. I think folks have a lot of engagement with local governments, and it's really reminding them of the role and the importance of social connection and how it does tap in to so many other priority areas of our locally elected officials. Actively seek and build partnerships with other community institutions. This one may seem as a no-brainer, but I think it really is understanding that everyone is talking about this and everyone is interested in working together to really wrap their hands around the issues that communities are facing. And I think being open-minded to engage with schools, to engage with after-school programs, to engage with parents in a way that is inclusive of their thinking, so that we are all achieving this and learning from one another. Such a vital role into how we're going to address social connection. And I think a key factor there is also that by engaging with other organizations, it's so intergenerational. You have young people, you have older adults, you have parents who may be in the mid-level of their career. And it's really creating a space and an opportunity for folks to all engage with one another in a way that improves social connection across the communities. And then the last two that I'll leave you with are, advancing and providing education and resources. So if you are leading programming, if you are capturing any data, if there are things that are working, it's sharing the word, it's talking about it, it's getting that information out there so that, what may be working in San Antonio could work in Houston or it could work in Austin. And it's really creating a culture of shared learning so that folks can adapt a lot of the best practices that they're seeing across the state and across the country as well. And then lastly, probably the most broader of them, but the most important, is really just fostering a culture of connection. And that's something that we in our office, we've been trying to do by an example. It's one thing to talk about social connection. It's another thing to actually try to embed a lot of the work and the learnings that we've gathered throughout the years into the day-to-day that we're doing in our office, so that we're practicing what we preach and really walking the talk. But with that, I'll hold for questions at the end of the presentation. But Tyler, I'd love to throw it your way to share an overview of some of the what now. So the report's out there. You did such an awesome job rolling it out in the spring. Would love for you to share some of the additional engagements we have and other opportunities for collaboration with our team.
Great, thank you so much, Raf. So yeah, as we discussed, the advisory came out in May, and our team has been thinking about creative ways to kind of continue the momentum, keep the word out, introduce the advisory to folks that may have missed it when it came out in May. And back to the point about engaging with campuses and engaging youth, our team is going to be embarking on a tour of some campuses over the fall, recognizing that there's a lot of overlap in our work with not only social connection, but just around youth mental health. And one of the pieces of feedback that we've gotten as we've talked with groups since the advisories come out in May is the extent to which it was sort of, our advisory was an eye-opener to people about the extent to which loneliness, social disconnection is impacting folks in their teens, folks in their early 20s. I think a lot of folks, to the extent that we recognize that disconnection is an issue, kind of think of it as maybe something that is predominantly focused on the elderly, but the extent to which it's really a problem across ages, and particularly for teens and folks in their young 20s has been a key piece of feedback that we've gotten. And so we've taken that feedback and kind of turned that into our plans for a campus tour this fall. There's going to be more information coming out shortly about where we're going to be visiting. So that hasn't been announced yet, and appreciate discretion there, but just a preview of something that's coming down along the pipe. And as well as sort of, we've been thinking about ways to issue sort of like a connection challenge of sorts, inspired by the Ice Bucket Challenge and other sort of viral moments that have gotten attention around a certain issue. And so our team is thinking of ways to how we can get issue out a challenge that would inspire folks to kind of reach out to folks within their network, friends and family, and just sort of deepen connection in their lives. So those are sort of the main two things that we're working on, just recognizing that a lot of our wheelhouse is utilizing Dr. Murthy's Bully Pulpit.
Great, thanks, Tyler. One last thing I'll add before we move to a Q&A portion, and let me know what's the best way to go about facilitating that discussion. You know, we really try to create a culture of learning within our office. And I think, you know, Tyler and I try to be open to discussing with folks and learning more around work that they're doing, so that we can share information with other folks who are interested in it. And I think that open door policy extends to you all as well. I think we really are just, you know, appreciative of the fact that folks are taking these reports and running with it, but also really wanting to use our office as a megaphone to share more about work that folks are doing in communities, because the statistics tell half of the story, but the stories and the examples and work that folks are doing in communities really lay out that picture for other folks who may not necessarily be as bought in. So definitely always continuously engaging with folks in different spaces to really share that narrative. And I believe you're muted.
The minute I start talking, it's kind of like ding. You'd think after 3 years, right, we'd have learned when to unmute. Anyway, I'm just going to open this up for conversation and questions. People can raise their hands or just jump in. That will be fine. I noticed, Paul, that you asked for the link. Yeah, we'll put that again into chat, but it was in the e-notification yesterday that I sent out about today. The link is in there for the advisory. And I assume that that's what you're asking about.
And I just shared it now in the chat. So folks,
there you go. Just like that, Raphael. Do you think it was his job? Anyway, I'm wondering too how many people have utilized the advisory in some way. I know from what we've been doing in my work and in the office is that we do collaborative work already. And through those collaboratives, we have found that when people come together with a purpose, and that the purpose is something like I consider very important to the community, it also, we call it the side benefit, but it produces wonderful and amazing relationships to people who form into those collaboratives and across the geography. So that is one really strong way that we work at social connectivity. And we've also worked with the efforts to work on the action guide for the country in terms of social connections. And they've been with us at the intersection. They're just different things that we have been doing. Any thoughts or questions out there for Raphael and Tyler? Done such a great job. And experiences too, what people know about this. That would be important information to share. Not just the advisory, but loneliness.
And
Sir?
yeah, I have a question for both Tyler and Raphael, and that's how are you going to, and how are you going to measure the impact of the programs that you're engaged with? Will we see, is there a way to evaluate whether communities who have gotten the message, whether they've increased their connectivity, connectedness, and what are they doing?
Doug, thank you so much for your question, Tyler. I could take first attempt at responding, and if you have anything else, please jump in. We're approaching it a couple different ways, I would say. Two ways in particular are really engaging with folks at the macro level to have a better understanding of what work exists in communities and what work is going on in communities. So I would say we're working closely with the U.S. Conference of Mayors to learn more about specifically mayor-led examples related to social connection that are ongoing. So I think it's quantifying how many of them had programs, which of them now have programs as a result of the release of the advisory, and then learning from them about what data they are capturing. And then secondly, we are working with the National Governors Association, with governors specifically and state health offices specifically. Governor Phil Murphy of New Jersey, the previous president of NGA, was focused on youth mental health. So there was a social connection component now. However, Governor Cox of Utah, who is the current president of NGA, is really looking at polarization and bringing folks of different backgrounds together. And a pillar of what he's really trying to focus on is increasing volunteerism in communities, which is a big part of the work that the advisory calls for. So I think from a measurement perspective, hearing directly from governors and directly from mayors around what programs they are now starting to implement, and taking those measurements and really compiling that in a way where we could tell that story is one example of what we're doing. And then I would say engaging with folks at the NIH and at the CDC who supported us with the development of the advisory. One other example I would just share is that this one is more specific to workplaces. However, we collaborated with the American Psychological Association on the development of their workplace survey to incorporate questions that were specific to social connection in the workplace. So although it wasn't something that they had captured previously, it is now something that they're going to capture annually in their survey. So we'll have that data. And I would say that we've also been engaging with folks at Gallup and elsewhere to see if we could better incorporate some of this language into the big survey data sets that are ongoing on an annual basis, so that we at least have a starting point to see what the trajectory is for our country and what those learnings have been and how we're actually making an impact. But I would say a big part of us putting out the advisory was that it is a softer area in the science where there isn't as much data there. So it's using this as an opportunity to galvanize research and to galvanize a lot of the data collection in this space so that we know where we are. And in a few years from now, we'll have a better idea of what that transition has looked like.
Yeah, Anne Marie put something in chat, and I'm gonna change, I think I can do this, but change to gallery. Here we go. And I'm going to ask people to utilize their hand, in the screen. You can even raise your hand, but we got a lot of closed screens, so you'll need to use your tech hand. But how many folks just in this screen have personally experienced this kind of isolation that we're discussing this morning? I'd like to say before the pandemic, but it's, during the pandemic and post. So Don's used his hand. Okay, let's see what we come up with. This informal polling here. You need to go to your reactions. And I'm putting mine up. I was with family, but we were totally isolated for 2 years. So I'm just gonna wait because it took me a little bit to find my little hand. Okay, and if you want to take your hand down, I'm curious then, and this could be personally or professionally, those who have encountered others in particular but others who have experienced isolation and or doing something in terms of helping to create social connectivity. So it's kind of a part of daily life, trying to bring people together. Raise your hand. Tyler's going old school. Okay. Man, I had a friend who's off at the Camino making the walk, and I'm substituting teaching for him at Our Lady of the Lake. And I couldn't get the technology to work on Tuesday, so I had to go way old school. Anyway, like teach without technology. There's something, right? Look at that. I'm also kind of curious, and we can put this into chat, but people can also open their mic. So if you want to take your hands down, that works too. But in what ways are you going about social connectivity? So I'm going to go first, because when I talked about collaborations, that basically is volunteers. Even people who do this kind of work, professionally, when they come into the collaborative, they're volunteering to be in that collaborative. Very few people are a part of the collaborative because somebody like a boss told them to be a part of the work, right? It's because people find common purpose and ground. So let's see what we got in chat. Oh, it's an idea. Broaden the recruiting, volunteer opportunities.
Yeah, and this is Don.
Yeah, Don.
Just real quick, wanted to talk. This is an interesting subject because I think our church focuses significantly on that age group from 18 to 30, and the connectivity within the church, but also connecting to the community at large, and really trying to upscale our volunteerism and all of those things. So there's lots of opportunities that we're giving for them to serve. And we feel that service connection is what changes their hearts and changes their minds around how their interaction with others makes a huge difference. So there's lots of work being done in that arena. And I think it's, as I talk with other churches in the community, I find they're struggling with the same thing, this 18 to 30-year-old group that's feeling disconnected or not feeling connected to something. So there's just a lot more that needs to be done there. And it is around volunteer, right? How do we get them to volunteer and be a part?
And everybody,
lots
Don
of opportunities coming up
yeah.
too, by the way.
Don is with the Church of the Latter-day Saints, and they have also developed some really great technology and ways to be doing what he's talking about. So I encourage you, if your congregations are interested in getting better at that, you might want to talk to Don, because they have really been fine-tuning how that works. And we can almost always count on LDS to have people show up when we need folks and get involved. We've got outreach on Saturdays, social media. I hope Raphael and Tyler, you're kind of looking at chat. Other ways, Beverly.
Yes, one of the things, and I see that Paul Porkawa also mentioned this, but I do think we've got to be much more creative. And I was hoping that maybe the city would help support some of some efforts to really engage. What Mr. Larson said was so very key, is getting people engaged in ways that they hadn't really thought about. AmeriCorps is one way, but also Peace Corps, Service Corps. But I do think we should, if we can, and just create some phenomenal opportunities. Pastor Veron Blue has created really a lot in her faith-based core of people really reconnecting, because they were reconnecting due to mental health, isolation, depression. And now they're kind of as a group of people doing things together to take care of each other. And someone said earlier that, our family connections aren't what they used to be. There's a whole sense of, in our generation, we always knew we would take care of our parents. But I've noticed, watching with other, that's not necessarily some of the same connections that exist in the other generations that have come behind us. But anything that what I like about AmeriCorps and Peace Corps is that they show value by also providing stipends. And I know that money isn't everything, but in our society, particularly in these younger generations, value is expressed through money or compensation. And so I know that there's many of us, as we've been working with younger people, we're wondering why don't they respond in the same way that we do? They're different, and what they value and what they expect to be shown to them that they're valued is different. So I'm just hoping that maybe several of us could come together and with our faith-based organizations and create some of these opportunities, because just straight volunteerism doesn't seem to be connecting people in the way that it used to.
Right. And Doug is right out there, volunteer with NAMI San Antonio, which is true of any efforts, right? Volunteer with WestCare, volunteer with the city. One of the things I've also put in the link for the new action guide on how to build social connection. So one of the things that I'm looking at doing is having, I don't know, probably like a morning or an afternoon time together to look at this action guide and bring people together, all the different collaboratives and others, and how we can utilize the guide, how we can work together on that. Another effort that I've been talking about for quite a while, but is all of our different nonprofits, et cetera, have pockets of volunteers, which, are very precious. I get that. It's one of the greatest assets, right, of any nonprofit. But what if there were a core volunteer system set up throughout San Antonio, and that with it, and I know that Don and the system they have there, Just Serve with LDS, but a system where people would also be connected as a San Antonian and being a volunteer, but receive orientation on why this is even important for our city. So in our volunteering, how we represent who we are as a people and as a community, I think there could be some connectivity and synergy that could happen. And then, all the different folks who need volunteers and people who want to volunteer, could kind of all come together in some connectivity. So I think there's something there as well. Doug is asking if Sacred has a portal for volunteer opportunities. I don't know if Billy, you want to answer that?
Sure, I can address that one. So no, we keep track of the nonprofits and the services, but we don't actually keep, we don't capture and try to track specific volunteer opportunities. Good idea. We've talked about it in the past. Erica Prosper brought it up quite some time back, but not at this time.
I think one thing for Raphael and Tyler, sacred.org stands for the San Antonio Community Resource Directory. And so an amazing, you might want to check it out. It's sacred without an E. So it's one letter short actually of sacred, SACRD.org. But I think what it has done through that community resourcing, it has connected community in a different way, right? It's lessened the frustration of people trying to find resources. And we all know the more frustrated we get as humans, the less we connect. In fact, we might even get combative in frustration, right? So helping others to find resources more effectively and efficiently, I think it helps people heal, find the things they need to heal, and provides more space in their hearts and lives to connect with other people. So I think Sacred has done a lot, but I know that volunteering has been talked about in terms of a portal art. Keith has his hand up. Keith?
Yeah, so just to enlarge on Billy's answer about whether or not Sacred has a volunteer portal, we don't have an actual portal, but we are making a deliberate effort to list volunteer and support opportunities at every one of the approximately 2,500 different organizations that we have listed in Sacred at the moment, so that when people are looking for volunteer opportunity, they can put in their zip code and find an organization that's doing work that's important to them and that will provide meaningful volunteer opportunity for them. So the answer is yes and no. No portal, but lots of listings that do provide information about volunteer opportunities across 100 different categories of need. So
I usually take a pause at 8:30 or 8:28 and I missed it. I was thinking. So those are people already leaving. I hope, Tyler and Raphael, that you were looking in the chat. You've been getting some kudos there. And next week, Dr. Q English from the Department of Health and Human Services is going to be with us. She was with us at Pathways to Hope, which, as Doug mentioned, was a supercharged opportunity for social connection. That it was connected in purpose and in time. So I hope you all come next week. She is quite inspiring and also pretty emphatic about mental health and the importance of social connectivity and healing. But what I've asked her is to do some reflect back to us. Since she was here for Pathways to Hope, and I already know some of her thoughts and comments, but it's always helpful to have people beyond us tell us what they see in what we're doing and what's effective, and maybe where places we can connect with others. So she's going to be with us next Thursday. I think we have time maybe for one last question before we tell Tyler and Raphael goodbye.
And I think they've already stepped off.
They already stepped off. I guess they took that as goodbye. And everything, get away from these crazy people in San Antonio, I guess. I don't know. I didn't say that. Edit that out of the content, if you would, Billy. Anyway, thank you all for being with us this morning, and look forward to next week. I won't be with you. I'll be on a plane at that time. But Jesse Higgins, who is the Chief Mental Health Officer with the city, will be doing the interviewing next week with Dr. Q English. So it should be really good. And I hope you show up. Tell others, please. We need to get this connectivity really going. Last week, I think we had one of our highest attendance, and I think everybody thought the Surgeon General was coming. I should try doing something like that again, right? Where they think somebody's coming and then, but I don't like doing bait and switch. That doesn't seem, very compassionate. So anyway, thank you all. Enjoy the rain. I plan to go out and stand in it at some point. So thanks.
Bye-bye.